Phil, welcome to the podcast today. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thrilled to be here.
Man, I am excited about this. This is I think this is a very unique approach on our podcast because having you on, we're going to talk about what you're spearheading, something called the Atlas Cup, a premier professional sports media property featuring uncrewed spacecraft competing head to head in orbit. So that's just space racing. Yes, absolutely. Why not? Right? Why not? But this is pretty interesting. I love the concept. But before we get into talking about Atlas Cup, why don't you share a little bit about your background? I've listened to some other podcasts. You have a very unique road into aerospace and space and defense. I know you've spent some time. You've tenured some time at Raytheon, some other big companies out there. But you started out as an attorney, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. An entirely bizarre kind of fate-driven background kind of led me to doing what I'm doing here. So,
yeah.
By trade, I'm an attorney, and I've been doing that in the aerospace defense industry for a better part of a decade.
Sure.
But I'm also an investor. So I've been kind of dabbling in different parts of the space economy as well over the last couple of years. And most recently, I was the CEO at Scout Space. So we were a space-based optics company, primarily serving the intelligence community. Ran that company for 2.5 years or so after starting as outside counsel, then in-house counsel, then took over as CEO. Tripled the team, reconfigured the business, won a few tens of millions of dollars of government work, and then got them their Series A lead and took off to go build what I'm building now. But before that, I had a whole bunch of different roles. So I've done the whole kit and caboodle. So I've done maneuverable platforms as in-house counsel and chief ethics and compliance officer at a very early stage space company that eventually went public and then collapsed in this like wild fury of fire.
Sure.
From there to another company doing maneuverable platforms and some launch aggregation stuff. They were actually the people who created the thing called the rideshare market, this idea of like kind of buying a rocket, putting it out to a bunch of smaller payloads. Yeah. Sold that company to private equity, helped run that deal, and then went to my last role at Scout. But before that, again, totally bizarre background that led me here. I'm not even a space guy, right? So the fact that I'm in the space industry is really, really weird. I'm an aviation dude. I like planes. I like things that fly. I like the history of aviation. I like the connectivity. I think aviation has changed the planet more than anything other than computing. And I'll die on that hill because the fact that I can go today to SFO and get on a plane in 18 hours, I can be in the plains of Africa is a phenomenal shift in how humans experience the world. So I think that is really what's attracted me to this world. And then the opportunities and the kind of growth in space itself have really been why I've ended up doing what I'm doing today. But even before that, right? I mean, I studied art history and surfed and studied Buddhism, and then I tried to go build homes in 2008. I didn't even want to go to grad school and do the law thing. That was a terrible time to build homes. Then I went to law school and hated it, so I did an MBA, and then I did I think 6 different post-grad programs at one point. I was working on an LLM at UCL London. I was doing a PhD at Embry-Riddle. I did a grad cert, like a postdoc at Stanford Spogli in intelligence studies. And I did a whole bunch of stuff that made no sense whatsoever. And after all of that, I took a job making minimum wage as the guy wearing like the orange vest at a little airport, moving Cessnas around and like cleaning planes. Cause I was like, I just wanted to do something with planes. Like,
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then purely by happenstance, ended up in the series of roles that led me to where I am now, which is, again, it's funny because I have early stage people who are always asking me in their careers, like, hey, like, give me some career advice. And I'm like, I'm the worst person to ask that question. Sure. I have no clue how to recreate what I did. This makes no sense to any objective observer. So yeah.
Well, focus and determination apparently is part of the part of that, because I mean, you were willing to take a smaller role just to get close, as close as possible, to the industry that you want to spend time in. So
yeah, exactly. Right. And there's something to be said for that, right? It's following your passion, right? Like you can't
be
stupid about it. Like at some point you got to pay your bills, but like,
that's right.
You got to take risks in this world. If everything you do is risk adjusted, like, it's boring.
Sounds like you're quite the Renaissance guy. I mean, obviously this is your love, this is your interest, but you have a lot of experience in different backgrounds that come into play here, Pretty well-rounded, sounds like.
I appreciate it, but yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I think, have you ever read the book, The Medici Effect? It's about like, okay, cool, right? So it's like business ideas where you take these like absolutely disparate set of data points and then you bring them together in a creative way. And that in history is kind of proven out to be really interesting. And I try to like kind of embody that, right? I want to go like
Yes.
try all the things and consume all the content and all the information and do all the stuff. And like, I'm going to get hit by a bus tomorrow for all I know. Like, I've got to go try now. I'm not going to sit back on my laurels and wait for something to happen. You got to go hustle. And
Yes.
life's not going to give you anything if you don't try to go get it. So
that's right. And it comes, what you just say reminds me of like so many great, I guess, business leaders out there that say, you know, one of the best things we can do, sometimes we get trapped in our own echo chamber in terms of our industries. And, you know, sometimes you got to look outside of, you know, your own industry to see what's happening, you know, borrow ideas from other industries
totally.
that are successful. So why aren't we doing more of that? So I think that's definitely a great approach to have.
It's also a
Always,
great segue to Atlas Cup because that's very much fundamental to what we're doing with Atlas Cup, right? We're a space company, but we're also a sports company. We're introducing professional sports to space, and that's like two completely divergent verticals that I'm trying to connect in a way that makes sense, and I think it does. And I have to kind of unpack that, but you know, it is I don't know, intellectual curiosity and kind of stimulating to suddenly go from being in like pointy end of the spear, like defense and intelligence world for the last decade of my career to like suddenly I'm networking with like people who run Premier League teams and trying to figure out like, okay, what is the mind of the average sports fan when they come to like content duration? Like, I mean, these are things that I've never had to consider before. And it's actually really interesting, just like from a like feeling my brain kind of like think through these things that I've never had to even consider before. And now I need to do it strategically and intelligently. It's really quite fascinating.
So give us an explanation on the whole concept of Atlas Cup.
Totally.
And if you would maybe give us like when did this start about? Because I think it goes back to as early as 2020. I think I've listened to an interview talking about like sometime back in 2020, like this idea, and maybe it was even prior to that. But give us the origin of this idea and this company.
Sure. Yeah. So let me start with a quick top layer of what we're actually doing, right? So I mentioned we're introducing professional sports to space, but what does that mean, right? I'm actually not the first person to be doing this, nor am I the only person working on it now. There's about 10 different companies doing some form of sports in space today. What I'm doing specifically is I'm trying to take our spot as the next iteration in heritage blue chip racing. So think Kentucky Derby, America's Cup, F1, traditional high value, high power things going fast, competing directly. I want to do that. So I'm not recreating the format of sport or competition. It's the same format, same competition idea. I'm just doing it in space. So we're talking uncrewed satellites racing head to head in low Earth orbit. So this is a maneuver based challenge. It's the fastest sport in history the moment it happens. It's 17,000 miles an hour.
Absolutely.
These things go. And we're going to be doing, 1,000-kilometer altitude changes and plane changes and inclination changes, basically ups, downs, lefts, rights, diagonals. And I've got a really, really smart aero-astro engineer, came from Stanford, was director of R&D at a company called Turian. She's doing all of my race architectures and designs, and she's making it as exciting as possible while also being realistic to what the state of the industry can do today. And that's really important because what we're doing here is trying to be hyper realistic about what existing tech can go off and go do. So we're trying to take the best of the space industry and stitch it together in a way that doesn't require me to build anything or test anything or validate anything. I want to go buy trusted, proven stuff. And I want to go create content in space with it by putting these things head to head for apples to apples comparisons, make it data driven, make it visualization driven, and then track it. And then I'm going to go create content around it. And I'm going to go distribute that content through our own proprietary web and app portals and through traditional social channels to go off and go get people where they consume their sports today, which of course is primarily social and mobile for this year for the first time. But to the story of like where this came from, it's about 5-6 years old, right? So the real story, again, and this is also, I can't take any credit for like coming up with this idea that like, oh, space racing or racing in space or sports in space. I'm not the first. I'm going to be the first one to actually do it, but I'm not the first person to have the idea. And it's been in, media and the social zeitgeist for a very long time, right? There's a couple of very, very successful video game franchises based around racing in space. It's been in Star Wars. It's been in Star Trek. It was in The Expanse, right? This is something, it's also been in like the geopolitical context, right? We've all heard about the space race, right? This idea of competition in space in one form or another is not a new idea. But when it really kind of came to a head was right when I was exiting Raytheon and I was going from like traditional weapon sales, foreign military sales, like big, expensive, multi-billion-dollar machine gun deal type things to the space industry with this mindset of like, hey, look, the space industry is not as pointy end of the spear. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I've worked in it for a long time. I just never really wanted to do it. It's not like my passion. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go to the space industry. I'm going to go join the startup. We're going to do a bunch of like cool dual use and commercial stuff. And I started learning about the space industry more than kind of traditional defense. And I was sitting there during COVID on an exercise bike watching Drive to Survive, like everyone else on the planet, and The Expanse. And I was like, why hasn't someone done this? Like all the tech exists. The maneuverable platforms are there. The tracking is there. Like the optics are all there. Every one of these satellites flies multiple 4K cameras on them already. Like why has someone not done this? And to be fair, 5-6 years ago, people weren't consuming sports in short format, right? It was still a very small population of people who were doing that. Most people were still watching 2-hour live event on a Saturday afternoon. And that's been the fundamental shift that kind of allowed me to go off and quit my job as CEO of another space company the end of last year to start this in January. Was that is now a phenomenal sea change shift in what the sports fan of today does. It is the majority of people's sports media content for the target demos are consumed through 30, 60, 90-second clips on TikTok, Instagram, and
exactly.
Like, and so that is just a totally different world than it was 5 years ago. So suddenly I can do that. I can create phenomenally engaging, visually exciting, emotionally connected content in space, and I can package it in 30, 60, 90-second clips. What I couldn't do very easily or cost effectively today is a 2-hour live event in space. Like we could do it, but it would cost a freaking fortune. And like the recurring cost to go create the content just becomes completely unworkable. So this is really just this amazing kind of Medici effect thing where I'm taking these like totally different worlds, looking at the macro trends where like space infrastructure has matured to the point of like, we don't really need to worry about building the hardware anymore. We can focus on building the application layers on top of it, just like we saw in the internet around like 2000. And sports world, where suddenly they're like consuming a huge amount of content in a different way that we're really well suited to go build for. And I'm like, why not? Right. There's also this amazing timing thing. And sorry, as a lawyer, I'll keep talking until someone literally kicks me out of the room. Like,
no, I'm just listening in.
Phenomenal, right? So, there's a moment in time here in the next 24 months where there's going to be more attention on space than at any point in human history.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've got SpaceX IPO this year. Next year, we've got Chang'e 7 taking China to South Pole. We've got Artemis 3 doing some really cool stuff in prep for the lunar landing the following year. We've got Vast flying Haven 1, the first commercial space station where, as I understand it, UFC is in talks to go hold a fight in space in the coming year. And then, of course, in 2028, we're going to have Artemis 4. We're going to take Americans back to the moon. There's going to be 250 million live viewers watching that. That is the biggest broadcast event in human history. Will be happening in space within the next 24 months. If ever there were a time to go try to put a media property in space and promote it, it's going to be the next 24 months. There's just no getting around that, right? So I feel like there's like basically a fire under me to go off and go build this as quickly as possible. Because as you can see here, right, first is everything for us. That's like a company motto. And it matters, right? Being a true first mover here matters. Whoever does this first will own it for a period of time and basically gets a free monopoly. And I love that. I'm a capitalist. I'm an investor. I'm an opportunist. I am here to make money for my investors and myself. And if I can go off and go kind of carve out my little niche and stake my claim and own it and operate in it and basically be the only provider, I will take it for as long as I can get it. And I will protect it like my life depends on it. And I think, again, this is just space is the Wild West. It's pure opportunity. This is a great way to go after something no one else is focused on.
So great explanation. Explain to us what an orbital race looks like using satellites, and what would that kind of lay out, maybe briefly, what that would look like in terms of a competition that people are watching.
Yeah, and to clarify, so we have a number of teams already committed to fly. So we have 2 different classes, effectively, initially for our races. We have a smaller, less performant satellite class for university teams. We have some leading astro programs signed up to go off and go do that. And we have our professional class. So those are larger, 250 kilogram and up satellites. Basically, think a Mini Cooper with wings flying through space at 17,000 miles an hour.
Nice.
So the beauty here is I'm intentionally trying to bring down the barrier to entry here so that this is easy for people to go participate in, because I think there's good net benefit for the industry. And I think that also helps my business. So I'm not asking people to go design a bespoke racing satellite, right? They're already building racing satellites in effect, right? There's 60 companies or so in the US and allied countries that are building specifically for a mission set called dynamic space ops for US Space Force and the intelligence community. And that is high maneuverability, high impulse, high command and control. Basically, it needs to zip around and be super controllable. So people are already building these things because that's where Golden Dome dollars are. That's where this like gigantic pot of government money is. So I don't have to go have anyone build anything that they're not already building. So what I'm actually doing is I'm going to these teams who are all effectively manufacturers of satellites, think like the Fords and Hondas of space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, hey, look, you're already flying dozens of these things. Earmark one when you're done with your primary mission, because they'll go and they'll deploy a couple smaller payloads, or they'll host a radio for a period of time, or do camera work or something. When you're done, come race. And that's it. And I love that idea, because otherwise these people are all building these satellites on spec effectively based on investor dollars. And they're like, they might have like a little bit of business to do in the first year or two, but at that point, they've got a 10-year lifespan and they have nothing to do for the last 8 or 9 years. So I'm giving them a way to go off and go demonstrate that they're good. They can market their capabilities. They can kind of like, there's good credibility that comes with it. And also there's money, right? We're a professional racing league. We're offering a real purse to the winner of the first races, right? So I think that eventually kind of clicked with everyone. And by eventually, I mean, very fast, actually. I mean, I started the business in January, right? We've got 40 plus partners already signed up, 5 teams signed up. We just filmed something for primetime TV just about 3 weeks ago that's going to be airing on a major channel sometime in Q3, Q4. Like we're far further along than I thought we would be when I started this in January. But so for them, this is just, it's an amazing opportunity. So to the races themselves, because that was the original question, right? So are satellites that are already in space. So we're not really focused on the launch element. We're not focused on the initial kind of operation element. It's not about speeding up the deployment of anything.
Sure.
Just assume they're already all there.
You're using the assets that are already there.
Exactly. Which is also good from a sustainability and responsibility perspective. Like, I think I live in Northern California. There's like a little bit of me that's a good, healthy hippie. And like, I don't want to do things that are not sustainable and not good for the orbital environment. And I think this is great because we're basically saying, look, it's already there. Let's go make more value out of something that already exists. I love that idea. So they're already there. And just like sail racing, this is pretty straightforward. So I already described, we're not 2-dimensional. We're 3-dimensional because it's space, right? So up, down, left, right, diagonals, right? So kind of drone racing league, if you will, but in space. But the format of racing is very similar to sail racing. So, of course, in America, most people don't watch sail racing, but it's a pretty straightforward concept. You basically define, here's a body of water, here's a couple of maneuvers defined by buoys, and here's a starting line and a finishing line, and then a starting time, and then whoever finishes first. And that's what we're doing. We're basically saying, all right, everyone get to a starting orbital parameter. Now, it doesn't mean all the satellites are going to be side by side. In fact, most of them are going to be at the like same orbit, but they're going to be actually substantially far apart from each other at different points around the Earth. And that's just a byproduct of how orbital dynamics works and also a safety consideration. But everyone will be normalized to the same effective orbit. And then we're going to say, okay, you're going to try to get as close to this perfect orbit prior to 12 p.m. on July 16th. And that's going to be the first maneuver for race 1 of our Grand Prix, which is going to be a series of races over 6 months, culminating in a points-based championship. And then it's going to be off to the races, right? So just like sail racing, you try to get as close to the starting line as possible without crossing over it, because if you cross over it, then there's a fault and you're disqualified. And then you get as close as you can, you optimize as much as possible, and then you're off to the races, right? You deploy your sails in sailing, or you turn on your thruster in space racing, and you're off, right? So imagine a satellite starts at 500 kilometers above the Earth and then blasts to 1,500 kilometers. So 1,000 kilometer distance traveled in about 45 minutes. And then they're substantially higher, and then they have to stop. So we gamify the whole thing, right? And this is where we need to get our fans educated on how dynamic space operations really functions, because there's a lot of elements that aren't kind of intuitive, right? So things like pointing accuracy, the ability to point your satellite exactly where you want it to go within like an arc second, so that you can like actually point and propulse in the right direction. If you're off by a degree or two, you're going to propulse a long ways in the wrong direction, right? And then the ability to stop, right? So if you're propulsing and you're going up from 500 kilometers to 1,500 kilometers, you're going to want to stop as close to 1,500 kilometers as possible. And the people who can do that accurately are going to be better positioned for maneuver 2. Basically, that's going to be turn 1 effectively, right? So the transition from segment 1 to segment 2 becomes turn 1. So some companies will likely very much struggle to stop right at 1,500 kilometers. They're going to end up at 1,575 or, 1600, and then they're going to be at a substantial disadvantage for the next turn. It's basically like coming in too wide on a turn in F1, right? And then we're just going to rinse and repeat over and over, different formats, different turns, different maneuvers, and we're going to gamify the whole thing, which is beautiful because we're looking at integrating with the prediction markets and betting markets as well, because we can create little fan engagement opportunities, little binary yes, no, did it happen? How accurately did it happen? Is there a range? Where in the range were they? Right. And there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff there. Additionally, that pointing mechanism that I mentioned is also really, really important. Just like in F1, where you've got these batteries now with this boost capability, we have things called reaction wheels. And those basically have the ability to spin inside the satellite, and they rotate the satellite, but you can only spin them so much before they have to recharge. So there's also this element of how accurately you can control your satellite, where we're going to be able to watch them kind of burn down their available budget of spinning capability. And if you're not efficient, you're going to burn through a bunch of spinning capabilities, kind of like wobbling back and forth to get to where you're trying to go. And we're going to be able to kind of gamify all of this. So it's an entirely new ecosystem of maneuvers and functionalities that we're going to have to get people familiar with. But there's enough of it that it's not just, and I hate the euphemism, but it's my own euphemism, it's not just refrigerators in space going from point A to point B. There's a lot of dramatic elements that we can storytell around. And final point, because again, I know I talk too much, but we're also very, very focused on the storytelling to get us to that first race and during the race, right? So we're not just talking about race content creation. We're also budgeting heavily to go off and go create basically Drive to Survive for space. And we're going to start filming that in January of next year, where we're going to take a professional sports doc crew, send them on a monthly or quarterly basis to our team locations, interview the CEOs who are trying to like populate the solar system, and the billionaires who are funding them, and the program managers and engineers who are building these things. Talk to them about their hopes, their dreams, their funding, the risks, the things that work, the things that don't work, the design considerations that they put into it. Did they pick an aluminum side or a composite side? Did they pick this reaction wheel or that reaction wheel? Did they go with this kind of propellant or that kind of propellant, right? And we can go create a lot of that storytelling and that knowledge, so that when we get to, Mini Cooper's racing in space in 2028, people are aware of what's going on, and they're excited to see company A because they went with these choices versus company B who went with those choices, or company C who has this, total asshole of a CEO who's like, everyone, right? There's human storytelling, and that's very, very important for us. I was just at a race with my kids down at Laguna Seca over the weekend, and it's like, it's a sensory experience being at a race, right? It's a cold beer, a warm hot dog on a hot day in the sun while your seat vibrates and the freaking motorcycles fly past. Like, I've got to figure out how to create something that's emotionally connective for people. And that's the real challenge here. Space stuff, I've got. The emotionally connective media storytelling, that's my real challenge. And that's where we're primarily today.
Real quick, because I know we're short on time. You mentioned universities, and that kind of sparked my interest. So you're getting a lot of feedback from universities on you said there's two tiers. There's a professional, and then there's more of an amateur with, schools, universities doing this. I think this is fantastic for a lot of these engineers to be involved in, these younger engineers.
Oh, they're thrilled. Yeah, the universities are thrilled. Like, it helps them with recruitment. I think the teams are really interested as well. So, I mean, there's a long history of engineering organizations at universities funding race teams. Chevron has a very famous solar car across Australia competition that's done every day. Formula E has been very active in doing kind of like open wheel electric racing and integrating with university teams. There's a whole bunch of great examples there.
We interview a lot of these teams at the Composites show that are doing like these composite cars. I mean, it's like incredible what some of these guys are doing.
Totally. And so there's also a long history of universities flying satellites. I've flown a bunch of them myself in my past roles. So, they're already funding satellites. They're already funding race teams. I'm basically saying fund a racing satellite team. And in the first two conversations I had are the only two conversations I've had, and both were like, we're in. How do we do this? And they're two of the top three aeroastro engineering programs on the planet, right? So these aren't fly-by-night universities. These are big-name universities that are like, this is amazing. How do we participate? So we just announced that league officially maybe a month and a half ago. It's called Atlas Cup Proving Grounds, and it's going to run in parallel, like same time, same place, same channels, right alongside the professional. But they're just smaller, cheaper satellites, so they're not as sexy, right? They don't go as fast. They can't do as cool maneuvers. But we're still going to do the exact same gamification, the exact same competitive mentality. And then we're going to also hopefully provide through some partners really interesting and really kind of lucrative support for these programs. So some of the leading aerospace companies are looking at potentially effectively sponsoring the teams, not us, but the actual universities. So those students get potentially cheap or free rides to space and access to hardware they wouldn't otherwise get. And basically it helps those companies with recruitment as well. So it's good for the kids, it's good for the companies, it's good for me. It's just generally like positive. It's just, which is lovely. Like this is like, I exited defense world and I get to go do stuff that's like helping students learn and making cool content, and like everyone's excited for good stuff, right? It's just generally very, very fun.
How do last question? How do people learn more if they want to find out more about this? If it's new to them, they want to get involved somehow. There's companies out there that would love to sponsor. How do they find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. And apologies for having to cut this short. So you can go to our website, www.atlascup.com, or you can go find us on all the major social channels. We have a lot of content that we haven't released much yet. There's just some teasers, but we have a lot of stuff coming out in the second half of the year around educational content, behind the scenes content. So that's all coming out very, very shortly. So Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, we're on all of them all the time. Additionally, you can find me quite easily. You can also just Google space racing. We're like the first hit now. So we're easy to find, follow, like, subscribe, all the things. You can also sign up for our fan newsletter so you can get inside scoops on what we're doing, updates on live.
I think I lost you there for a second. Phillip, are you back?
I'm back. Yeah, you got me?
Anyway, great interview. I know you got to run, but I'd love to have you back on the show sometime in the future. Follow up with you. This is fantastic. So interesting, and looking forward to getting this out to our listeners. Hey, thanks again. Have a great week.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks again.
Bye.
That was great, by the way.